Welcome to Construct Tech TV, and I'm Peggy Smedley. And I'm actually really excited about this episode. I recently had the pleasure to sit down with multiple smart city executives at the Connected Cities USA conference. Now, we had aired some of these interviews already on this show, but today I thought I would focus on an entire episode on what 3 cities are doing. Now, I'm going to look at Kalamazoo, Michigan, Dubuque, Iowa, and San Jose, California. Now, 3 very different cities, 3 diverse yet similar approaches to connecting their towns. Now, are you ready to take a look inside? Now, let's go. First, journey with me to Kalamazoo, Michigan. Tim Dubois, CIO of the city of Kalamazoo, Michigan, has some truly big initiatives in this town. Now, think connecting citizens and building a smart city. Now, it's never easy, and Tim says with the right vision and actually the right citizens, anything is possible.
Where we're approaching it is to build the infrastructure. So like most other cities, we've had tight budgets, really tight budgets for a long time.
And you're not uncommon. It's not
yeah,
uncommon.
no, right. It's most cities are like that. So where we're coming out of that a little bit now, so we're kind of rebuilding our infrastructure and getting that as a foundational piece. Network infrastructure, or server infrastructure, and getting that as a foundational piece, and then building into how our city operates and the city processes and how we use the technology, and then expanding that out into connecting with the citizens.
That's just one vision in Michigan. Next, let's move just a little bit west to the town of Dubuque, Iowa. This town has a lot going on in terms of connectivity that we're going to take a look at today. Now, Michael Van Milligan, he's the city manager for the city of Dubuque, Iowa, has a number of smart city initiatives that I want us to talk about.
Sure. Well, Dubuque is very much a data-driven and outcome-focused community, and the council has made it clear to us that they want us to build the foundation on resiliency and sustainability and equity. So those are the lenses that we look at all the things that we do through those.
So let's talk about sustainability. That's a very big undertaking in a lot of those, and resiliency in those. Can you help us define what some of that means for those who might be watching and really want to understand how that's going to impact and maybe what other cities might want to do and how that's impacting Dubuque and what you guys are specifically doing?
Sure. Well, let's start with resiliency. So what we try and do is we try and be prepared so that if as major incidents happen, whether they're weather related or economic related, that we're prepared for those, and people who live in our community are prepared for those.
And we know, being in the Midwest, a lot of crazy things happen with weather, right?
They do. And then also the idea that when those things do happen, you have to be able to recover from them quickly. So that's how we look at resiliency. So being prepared for these things that are going to happen, and then having an ability to quickly recover from them. Then related to sustainability, we try and the solutions that we look at, we try and make sure that they're long lasting, and so they're not just sort of a one-off, that there's actually some sustainability to the solutions. And then we also look at it from an equity lens. So it's our goal to, for instance, we disaggregate data. So it's important to understand how people, different groups of people and individuals are impacted by different things. And it's great to collect data, but if you don't disaggregate the data, it's hard to solve a problem that you don't know exists. And so there might be a problem in one particular segment of your community that you can identify if you're looking at it through an equity lens. So when you combine those 3 things, we think you end up with a successful community.
Finally, let's journey even further west, all the way to Silicon Valley. Here, citizens expect experimentation, and that's exactly what the city of San Jose is doing. Keshuv Gupta, the IoT lead in San Jose, California, opens up the need for connected traffic lights. He also talks about the importance for sustainability and the need for social change that will entail urban planning and transport. Let's see what he has to say.
About 3 years back, our mayor set out a vision for the smart city to make us look at our work and how we do this work in a way that actually benefits our residents. So we want to make San Jose a smart city, and he has challenged us and asked us if we can make San Jose one of the smartest cities by 2020.
And how do you do that? You know, when you set out these initiatives, what exactly is his objective?
We are looking at using a lot of the technology that is available to us now and translating that into a vision that would allow us for using the technology to benefit our residents. So it's a multidimensional problem to be solved, if you would. We want to look at how we make San Jose a sustainable city, how we want to make San Jose a demonstration city, what we think about making it user-friendly, resident-friendly, and trying to ensure that what we do is for the residents' benefits. Technology not for the sake of technology, but for the use of our citizens and the benefits that they get out of it.
Ultimately, San Jose is making some big moves that will impact businesses and citizens. It is placing connectivity and the Internet of Things truly at the center of everything it is doing. Now let's really take a look at how it is implementing the IoT and some unique use cases and what's going on.
So we are taking a look at finding these use cases where we not only solve the immediate problem that we have at hand and one solution fitting one problem only. We are trying to find solutions that can be leveraged across use cases. So for example, one of the areas within smart cities is around converting our high pressure and low pressure sodium vapor lamps, the street lights ecosystem that we have, and convert that into an LED, which is a very high energy efficient ecosystem. If we take a look at just using that transition as energy savings only, then we might not be doing ourselves a favor, because today we have technology available and quite a few of the cities are actually taking advantage of that we can build this ecosystem not only with LEDs but also smart controllers, which allow us for adaptive lighting, dimming, brightening this lighting, and having a lot more energy savings. But at the same time, this ecosystem that we put together, this lighting platform can end up being a connectivity platform for our IoT devices. So if I invest in something, what are the components in that investment? What are the solution pieces in this investment that I can leverage and have that be used and be made available for my next use case and the next use case? So by the time I'm done with 3, 4, 5, 7 use cases, I've built a set of foundational capabilities that are repeatable, reusable, and modular. At the same time, it also gives me an ability to harness my data and collaborate with different departments using that data. We call it the digital thread. Basically, in the Internet of Things world, you have a lot of these sensors in the ecosystem which are connected to a lot of back-end systems. So you have a connectivity layer, you have a storage and compute layer. On top of that, you have a platform or an ecosystem where you build applications to derive some meanings out of the data. You translate this data into a set of patterns. Patterns provide you insights. Insights help you make decisions. How do we leverage this decision-making ecosystem, if you would, so that we can make better decisions for our citizens?
Now, if you want to hear some pretty unique use cases, Dubuque has many of them. And Van Milligan has some very interesting perspective that he shares. First, let's look what he is doing with utilities in his city.
Let's talk about utilities for a minute. What people want to accomplish is one of two things. They either want, or both in some cases, they either want to save money or they want to save the environment. And as I said, some people want to save both. But to do that, they have to have information. And so the idea of collecting data, but then giving people access to that data so they can make decisions about, for instance, how they use water, how they use electricity, how they use natural gas, how they recycle, how they use transportation services. So we've done studies in all those areas and helped citizens appreciate how they can accomplish the goals they want to accomplish.
The city is doing something pretty distinctive with transportation services and radio frequency identification, otherwise, as you all know, RFID. It uses technology to lead to a 40% increase in ridership. Now, this is flat out impressive, as you will see.
Yes, so for instance, we looked at transportation services, so we run our own transit system. And we're a town of only 60,000 people, but we still have people that need transportation services other than ones that they own themselves. And so we were trying to decide how do we improve access to our transit system. And so we had 500 citizens who ride our transit system carry an RFID device, and it told us every time they got off and on the bus. And then we had 500 citizens who didn't use our transit system agree to put an app on their phone that tracked everywhere they went. And we took that data, analyzed it, redesigned our transit system, and we increased our ridership by 40%. So from the buses just driving around in circles, that not
a little
everybody,
chip, a little radio frequency
Yeah.
identification chip did all that.
It did. And so, and actually that device was, John Deere has a manufacturing plant in Dubuque. They used it to track packages, so we just borrowed it from them and used it to track people.
But that's not it. The city is also doing something unequivocally innovative with waste management that I want to share with you.
We partnered, and by the way, the transportation services study was a partnership with the IBM Watson Research Center, and so is this next example. So we partnered with the IBM Watson Research Center, and we tracked the waste that we collect. So we put on our trucks a device that would show, and then had citizens put on their recycling containers a device that would track how much and when they recycled. And so right now we're currently analyzing that data on how we think we can improve our recycling quantities based on having the facts of who is recycling what, when, and how much.
And then looking at that, not only when they're recycling, but do you ultimately think you can actually save in utilities and the idea of, you know, gas consumption when the trucks are going out, picking up and things like this, and actually the whole idea of logistics and all of this, so you can look at a bigger picture of waste management?
Well, we are optimizing, looking at route optimization so that, yeah, we do minimize the times that we have to go to the homes with different vehicles, and we are now converting part of our recycling system to a larger bin system where maybe we'll be able to go only every other week instead of every week to each house just on the recycling end. We haven't implemented that yet, but we are looking at that.
But wait, there is still yet another example. It also has a smart home program that is making a really impressive statement here.
We have partnered in some other studies from the utility perspective, once again with the IBM Watson Research Center, and we partnered with our local electric utility, who is a privately held utility, to create a system whereby we had 1,000 pilot homes that participated, where they could track their electrical usage through the use of looking at their computer every night to determine how did they compare with their usage to similar sized houses in our community. So they could it's difficult when you purchase electricity. It's like if you went into the grocery store and there was no cash register and no prices on the products. You just walked through and picked things and threw them in your cart, and then you went home, and at the end of the month they mailed you a bill and you didn't know how much anything cost.
Exactly.
And that's the way we purchase electricity today. So having this dashboard on your computer allowed you to track how much electricity you used and when, and how you compared to other similar people with their electrical usage. And the pilot homes saved 6% on their electrical bills by having that information on how they use electricity. We did a similar thing we own the water utility, so we did a similar project with the water utility. We had 1,000 homes participate, and actually the savings was exactly the same, 6%. So it was where they were able to track through the dashboard on their computer their own water usage, compare it to other homes, and determine how their water usage was. But they had even more information in that case, because one of the big ways you spend your money on water is the water you waste through leaks. So we also track on a 15-minute basis how much water you're using. So if from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning you're using water all night, you're probably not.
Big waste,
You're probably
right.
sleeping. So then we send the person a notification that says, unless you were up all night last night, you have a leak. And then of course the person can fix it. And in that case, we were able to save have the citizens save 6% on their bills also.
Now that I've given you actually a really good glimpse into what these smart cities are doing, let's talk about some of the challenges. And we all know that there are a plethora of them. Gupta in San Jose says that some of the biggest challenges are moving at a very fast pace, funding, and the hype and the horror of all of the Internet of Things.
It is never as quick as you would like. There are distinct challenges that one would have, both from a funding perspective, from the pace of technology. There are sayings around Internet of Things which it can range from from hype to horror, if you would, which means that it can solve all the world's problems to people are just horrified by how immature the technologies are, and you go and invest in some of those, and then you realize that it is not half-baked as compared to what it should have been. So how do you balance this? How do we look at decoupling the problems that we're trying to solve for? I might not be able to solve a lot of problems together and in a very optimal way, but I want to solve for problems which have been solved over the years, and solutions out there are very mature. In other cases, there is an opportunity for more experimentation, more understanding of the solution and what works in our ecosystem. So as long as we are looking at problems not as one big whole, but as piece and parts, what category of problems we are trying to solve for, I think we might have a much better outcome compared to if we were to try and solve everything together.
Over in Kalamazoo, Dubuque explains that one of the biggest hurdles is simply coordinating everything.
Really just coordinating and getting all the activities put together. We started, again, Imagine Kalamazoo was, initiative to get the community involved, but we started with zero data, zero metrics, or near zero. So just kind of coordinating all these activities to go, okay, what is it that we're going to measure? How do we collect that data? How do we get that out to the public? And how do we create this tool for everybody?
And it's hard though, not knowing when you have zero data, knowing what data you want to look at and getting the right information sometimes can be hard, because when you talk about those KPIs, knowing the right thing is very difficult, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I have
that's the struggle. Sorry.
That's
one of the struggles we continue to deal with is, what is it that we want to measure? Even though we have a goal and we have even a sub-goal underneath that, what is it that we want to measure to meet that goal, and what is it that we really talk about when we're talking about?
But he also articulates this simple message. Despite all the bumps in the roads, the big ticket in all of this is simply refreshing the network and getting all the systems updated.
Yeah, so a lot of that is really internally focused on what really needs to be fixed and work right now for this to really be implemented well and to work. So like I said, network refresh for us is a lot of it. Just getting our systems up to current technology in some cases is part of it. But we've had some fairly inexpensive, easy ideas that we've done or are doing. So we've got a Veterans Memorial in our city, which you can purchase bricks and put the veteran's name on the brick. So we're doing that where you can go to a website and see your brick and map out where the brick is in the memorial.
That's a neat idea.
Yeah.
It's important. That's an important thing to do.
Right, and it gets it out there for people that aren't able to come visit the city but have bought a brick for it. That's one that we're working on now. Online permitting for our building permits. That's one that we're live with now, kind of a soft launch, but we're live with that. And that was really one that they've been trying to do for several years, and it's just we found the money for it.
But online permitting makes a big difference in what contractors can do in trying to get things done faster. I mean, because online permitting, if you think about it, it's a huge delays in trying to get permits and getting things done. Residential, commercial things holds things up a long time in a lot of things, and that speeds the process up considerably.
Absolutely, and that's like I said, that's what we're trying to do is connect with our residents and our contractors and make it work.
The other common theme that all of these city leaders are focused on is rebuilding their infrastructures. Many cities have experts to analyze road conditions and to determine which roads need to be replaced. Van Milligan of Dubuque explains there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Technology is playing a critical role in helping to determine which roads really need to be rebuilt.
Well, we do something that a lot of other people do. We hire a firm every year that goes through in partnership with the Iowa Department of Transportation and goes in and analyzes all our roads. And they give us that information to help us decide on which roads that we should fix. So I think that's something that a lot of places do routinely, but we take something a step further. Is we repave about 10 miles of our streets every year, and one of our concerns was back to I mentioned earlier that we try and look at things through an equity lens. So we were trying to figure out, okay, are we being equitable in what streets we're picking each year to fix? Because quite frankly, there's a lot of them that could be on that list to be fixed. So in our transit system, through the Federal Highway Administration, they actually have a computer program that measures equity related to bus routes. And so what we did is we took that equity tool from the transit system and we used it on our street system so that we tracked every street that we repaired and did the same equity analysis, which is a link to the U.S. Census Bureau information to determine. So we already knew about our transit routes. Now we know about our streets. Are the list we're considering, is it an equitable distribution of the streets within our community?
And this is exactly why data is so important. Data gives people what they need most, when they need it most, and which information to use to make the decisions to accomplish the key objectives. Data also helps cities truly define the most important problems.
It's back to that idea is you can't solve a problem that you don't know what the problem is. So you have to be able to define it. And the only way to define it, and sometimes the only way to even know about it, is to be constantly collecting data. So the council has made it a goal for a 50% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2030. And so we were able to determine that one of our significant contributors to our greenhouse gas problem was actually our own, what people call sewer plant, because we incinerated our sewage. And so we spent $60 million to replace that plant with an anaerobic digestion plant. And now an anaerobic digestion plant, the only byproduct they create is fertilizer and methane gas. Now methane gas is also a pollutant. So then we partner with a private company to come in and cleanse the methane gas. And what we do is we cleanse it to the point where it's actually CNG, and we sell it back to the natural gas company into their pipeline. You also can, of course, you get RINs from the Renewable Fuel Standard, so that's a great income stream. But at the same time, we're in the process of analyzing converting our fleet to CNG so that we then would burn our own bio-CNG that we create from the methane to put into our own vehicles. And so it's sort of a closed loop system, but it's back to this whole data-driven idea is you have to know where the problems exist, and we were able to determine through data that part of our greenhouse gas contribution was coming from us.
Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the importance of partnerships on this episode. Simply, when it comes to smart city initiatives, we can't do all of these things alone.
Partnerships is a really important word that you use there. Is you cannot do these things alone. It's just not possible. There's too much expertise needed and, quite frankly, too much money needed. And so, for instance, I use the example of cleaning the methane gas at what we call our Water and Resource Recovery Center. Some people might call a sewer plant. That was
It's a cleaner way of saying it, right?
That was completely financed by a private party. And so, of course, since that's managing our risk, they get a share of the profits, but so do we.
Those public and private partnerships are key in a lot of this.
No, they absolutely are.
Van Milligan also outlines the importance of partnering with private contractors on creative solutions. It also starts by identifying problems that exist and potential solutions, and then looking at the long-term impact.
Well, I guess that would be a special challenge for me, is giving private contractors advice on what they need to do. But I know what we look at. So, for instance, we had a part of our community where there was a tremendous amount of flooding that went on, and so we brought in private contractors to help us identify what are the problems that exist, and then what they did is they actually worked with the neighborhoods to identify the flooding problems. But then what are the potential solutions that exist, and then what are the long-term impacts of those different solutions? And so the private contractors have the ability to help us with that because they have the knowledge that you need to have on what the potential options are and what the new technologies exist that could help you. In that process, we were able to implement a $219 million stormwater management program that saved an entire area of our community from flooding, who had had 6 presidential disaster declarations since 1999. So they knew every 2, 3, 4 years they were going to flood, and since the implementation of that project, they haven't. So we know that we can partner with private contractors on creative solutions to help people succeed.
So we've had some other interviews, and the key to a lot of this with a really smart construction company right now is to think out, to think ahead, not just to think about the project at hand, but to think about what potentially can happen and to work with the cities about what might happen and to think futuristically in their developments and whatever they might be. And that's the best way to work with any given city.
Yeah, they need to try and partner on the front end of projects and not just look for bid specs on the back end of projects. So that I would think that any good construction company today needs to have that front end division of their company so that they're helping the communities find the solutions that they need and then participating in implementation of those solutions.
Dubois of Kalamazoo also explains that communication with contractors is essential to improve our infrastructure and our cities, and that's how we're going to make them smart.
That's starting to work really with public meetings, with our community development department, working with them and working with the contractors and the known entities within the city.
He says we need to get everyone involved to make it very successful, the community and the stakeholders. And that is exactly why Kalamazoo is achieving so much success.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think having the community involved and lots of involvements from different stakeholders is important. What the City of Kalamazoo did was get people involved a few years ago and came up with kind of a longer-term goal process called Imagine Kalamazoo 2025. And the community was directly involved in that.
And how did that process entail for 2025? What were kind of some of the steps involved in that?
So a lot of that was really just goal setting. So it wasn't like concrete process or steps, but it was set up the goals and how we want the city government to really work for the city and with the city residents.
So where is the City of Kalamazoo headed next?
So one of our other big initiatives that we're working on, again, just beginning, is a data reporting and KPI metric reporting. And KPI is key performance indicators for anyone, but and getting that out to the public and being able to show publicly available dashboards of what we're doing and how we're spending money and how we're doing on these projects. So that's one that we just started with a data analyst and a data management piece to move that along.
Finally, let's really look to the future. Think machine learning and artificial intelligence. It is coming to all of our smart cities, and in some cases, it's already here. Van Milligan of Dubuque has a vision for what the smart city is doing now, but what he has in mind for the future is even bigger.
This whole idea of machine learning, we think is going to be really big for cities. So right now we're implementing a project where we're taking our 115 traffic signals and we've interconnected them all with fiber optics. That's cost us millions of dollars to accomplish that goal over the last 10 years. But now we're going to use the artificial intelligence principles connecting all those traffic signals so that they all will adjust in real time. And so, for instance, on an east-west corridor, if there's a traffic accident on a main thoroughfare, the lights will automatically on the other east-west corridors lengthen the timing. So there doesn't need to be any human intervention to make that happen. And we'll have that implemented within 3 years. And so that's going to be a tremendous savings of time for people, but also the savings you have from fuel usage and pollution from the vehicles being stuck in traffic if there's a traffic accident or a snowstorm or whatever it happens to be, where now the system will always be in real time be adjusting itself to be as efficient as possible. I certainly don't know what a lot of the other examples are today, but I know we have a lot of services that we deliver, from police to ambulance to firefighting to inspection services. So many of those things are going to take on a completely different tenor than they are today.
Emergency response, you think?
Exactly. First responders, it's going to be a total different picture, especially as our healthcare system transitions. So will it be just our ambulance service goes and picks up a patient and delivers them to a fixed place? Probably not. Probably that ambulance will actually deliver the service right on the scene, and that'll be the end. And there'll be more than paramedics in that ambulance. And so that interconnectedness that they're able to have, where let's say a nurse or physician's assistant or whoever is in that ambulance will be connected with a whole network of diagnosis systems that they don't exist today, but I remember when I was younger and watched the show Star Trek, I think I saw those systems, but they're going to be real to us.
Kalamazoo, Michigan, Dubuque, Iowa, and San Jose, California. All of these are innovators in their own way, and they are demonstrating what a smart city can look like today, tomorrow, and in the years to come, or should I say, far into the future. That's multiple cities connected. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching Construct Tech TV, where we are talking tech at the job site.